Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Weather Nerds YouTube channel. I'm your humble host, meteorologist Greg Majeski, your no-nonsense, straightforward weather guy. You know, there's enough hype out in social media, and to be honest, we don't friggin' need it. So if you like weather that's brought to you in a straightforward fashion without scaring the bejesus out of you, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're alerted on future content. Invite your family and friends. I do appreciate you guys checking us out the channel here today. All right, let's get into the weather reports. You know, we're kind of October. We're kind of definitely getting into the meat of fall season. It is a really big showdown between the seasons. You got winter trying to approach. You got summer trying to hold on. That's why we call it fall. That's why we call it the transitional season. And we're definitely going to be seeing that here over the next week. And it's we're going to see a series of some cold fronts trying to come down. But boy, that stubbornness of summer just really holding on, especially with that outlook. I'm going to show you that here in just a second. All right, let's talk about yesterday, our extremes. We had, let's see here, we had Gillibrand, Arizona hit 100 yesterday, and Hartselle, Colorado, 28. Those were our extremes yesterday across the nation. Look at satellite imagery. Obviously, you can't help but be drawn to the two hurricanes, the two dueling hurricanes that are moving on out. This is going to bring a nice little reprieve down the eastern seaboard here. We get a little backdoor wedge coming in here. Behind that, it's going to bring some nice fall weather here for a few days before they warm back up here. The middle of the country, boy, you guys are still looking at some very warm weather here. Even got some thunderstorms there. We'll take a look at there in Nebraska here for this morning. But generally looking at staying warm. And then west, you guys got on the storm system out there on the west coast. We got some colder temperatures that will be coming out there. And we're going to talk about that as well. Let's go look here at the, let me switch over to... Let's go over to this one here. All right, transition over there and get out of studio mode here. Here we go. All right, so here's the weather map here. Again, we got that storm system on the west coast we were talking about there. Some pretty good rains from Washington State coming all the way down into Northern California. Got some thunderstorms that are up here from North Dakota all the way down into Kansas. Got a nice little line of storms in that area. Unsettled out here in the west. Quiet in the southwest, looking good down there. And the southeast after some clouds down there across Georgia yesterday for most of the day. You guys will get a little more sunshine here for this afternoon. Still holding on to some warm temperatures, though, across the south. In fact, let's go ahead and talk about some of that thunderstorms there in the middle of the country there in Nebraska. And you kind of see the rains there kind of coming up through Nebraska near O'Neill, coming down toward Grand Island and Hastings. A few rumbles of thunder with some rain. That's sleeping weather right there. That's what I call that. But again, what's interesting here, not only for today, but really for the next 3 days, there isn't any organized severe weather. Storm Prediction Center does not have any severe weather out issue for the next 3 days, and nor am I expecting any excessive rainfall amounts. So a little on the quiet side here as we start the month of October. Not sure if we're going to stay that way for the whole month, but we'll see. Again, looking pretty decent for the start. Watches and warnings. One thing out there to really kind of bring your attention to is some of this cold air across the Northeast. We got some freeze warnings out there across New York State and up into New Hampshire. But otherwise, that's about it. Pretty quiet across most of the nation. Let's do a quick update out in the tropics. Let's talk about that. Here's our dueling hurricanes out there. Umberto's becoming extra tropical right now as it moves on out, and Imelda's heading on out. But again, like I said, we're going to benefit from these two storms along the East Coast, including in my neck of the woods down near Atlanta, as we got some very nice, refreshing days coming in here for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. There is the latest on Umberto. Boy, it's a big wind field there, some 250 miles plus in size of tropical storm force winds, but definitely becoming extra tropical, moving northeast at 14 with 80-mile-per-hour winds. And then there's Imelda, top winds at 90 miles per hour, and it looks to give perhaps a direct hit on the island of Bermuda. So, but this one will be moving on very quickly across, and this storm here might actually provide a major storm into England, believe it or not, as it becomes extra tropical. And then once it gets up that way, we're going to see how it influences the overall jet stream pattern. For those who don't know, when you get these tropical systems, these hurricanes, when they move to the northern latitudes, they can, because they're kind of bringing high pressure with them aloft, they cause buckles in the jet stream. So once that happens, then you got to look at what we call the long wave pattern across the globe to kind of see how it works out. So typically it does bring pattern changes, but it usually takes 10 to 14 days to kind of see the fruition of all that. So we'll watch that very closely here as we go deeper in the month of October. All right, let's look at the tropics here. Again, you got these two storms almost like one big giant blob kind of merging together there. They're so close together. We got a tropical wave out here in the middle, and then we got another one back here toward the intertropical convergence zone. That one needs to be watched, at least looking at the latest model run here. As I show you that, as I got this looping, this is the ECENS, the European model run. As we say goodbye to our two tropical systems getting on out of here, you see this initial one. There's something down in here. But watch this little cluster here coming up out of the tropics here going into next week. So that's a nice little cluster there. So we'll watch that closely to see if that becomes developed. But even then, it still looks like it's being pulled northward once again. That's the way the pattern has been most of the season. And really, as we get into October, I'm paying attention to the Gulf and down here in the western portions of the Caribbean, and I'm just not seeing anything coming. So right now, we're looking quiet. And if we go through the rest of the season without a tropical system, I'm not going to complain. But we haven't had that happen since 2015. That was the last time we had a season where we didn't have a landfalling tropical system here across the continent of the United States. All right, so, and again, here's the peak. Again, keep in mind, we're on the 1st of October officially. There is the 1st of October right there. So if you wanted to draw a line straight up, we still got that much season ahead of us. So we're not quite done yet, but the deeper we get into October, the less likely it is for us to see a quote-unquote big hurricane come into the United States. It just becomes a little more problematic. All right, nothing to show you on the extreme, so we're just going to dive right into the model data here. First, we're going to look at the NAM, the intermediate model here. As we're looking at some active weather out on the West Coast, our friends out there, you're going to have to deal with some wet weather out there as that low pressure moves on in here, the Intermountain region. Also going to be looking at some wet weather. So here comes the storm system here. Again, we're saying goodbye to our hurricanes. West Coast, look at this big high up in here. But look at all those isobars. Those are lines of equal pressure. It's going to be a bit breezy from the mid-Atlantic down into the south. Very warm here in the middle of the country. Continue fairly dry for the most part. And as that's going to continue here as we go into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So looks like the Southwest looks quiet. Although the Southwest needs to watch next week. There's a tropical system down in the Pacific that might work its way northward into that. In fact, I probably needed to show that real quick. Let's talk about that real quick here, as that's a possibility here. There it is right there. It's this system right here. We have to watch this one to see how it develops, but this one might do one of these jobs. And of course, we had the flooding last week in Phoenix, and we could see it again if this thing works up toward the north. So just keep that on mind. Octave is heading out to sea, but that next disturbance, which is showing 8% likelihood of development, may become a hurricane or a tropical system that may bring some moisture into the Southwest. So I just wanted to point that out before I kind of moved on here. So, all right, now look at as far as your rainfall here. Again, your main rainfall total is going to be here, the north. We're obviously looking out here into the northeast in here. Let me get my weather pen back up here. Sorry about that. You're looking at up in here, so you're looking at some rain up here, the Intermountain region. Down here across Florida, maybe a little across Minnesota. Really, a lot of the country pretty dry here going through Friday as far as rainfall totals are concerned. So it's not looking too bad there. And let's go switch over to the temperature. The big story here, these warm temperatures in the middle of the country, they're still going to be there. Kind of see it kind of squeezing in on both sides a little bit, but still seeing 80s going up into the Dakotas into October. That's a little unusual to see that. We do have that wedge working in here across the eastern United States here. See that green working its way down even into Georgia there, going into Friday morning. Watch this going into Friday. We got a lot of grain here going down into the south. So very nice and cool across the eastern seaboard, but warm in the middle of the country, a little bit cooler out in the west, and that trend looks like it'll hold into the weekend as well. All right, so let's talk about the overall jet stream. Okay, now we talk about the battlegrounds. We're talking about the two seasons kind of duking it out. Boy, you can kind of see the transition here on this European model run. Okay, so we got this one trough here coming into next week that's kind of moving to the north. It's trying to come south, but that front's not going to make it to the south. We got high pressure here across the south that's going to beat that back and hold it back. And then this kind of swings on out, and then looks like that high just holds there. Look at that right there. Boom. We're going in toward the end of next week. We got high pressure here across the south. All right, so we got high pressure down here. You got this big trough coming in out and toward the west, and that trough is going to try to beat back that high. It doesn't have any luck. It rides over the top. See, it just goes right over the top. That high. This is a La Nina setup. This looks typical La Nina. I mentioned this yesterday, but this moves on to around it, and then it starts to squeeze it on back here, and then you kind of see that. But the jet stream definitely looking a little more active than compared. Like, look at this right here. Comes a lot more amplified as we get the high pressure starts to shift out here to the west, and then we'll get this back in the east. So do we see a mid-month pattern change? We'll see. Again, this is long range, okay? So we'll have to wait and see if this becomes a trend. We'll always talk about that. But look at where the jet stream is. Look how it's behaving like at the beginning of the period. You know, kind of up, everything's up to the north. See the big high pressure ridges there on the northeast and out toward the west. And then notice where it is by the time we get to the end of the run. Now we're talking. Now we're getting into something a little more progressive and getting a little more active. And of course, if it gets a little more active like that, we'll have to watch for that secondary severe weather season, potentially end of October going into November. So we'll have to watch that. All right, let's talk about the precipitation out there. Again, next 7 days, we got that one storm system here. It's going to come out in the west, kind of going to sneak up into the northeast. So they got this one little thing going up or in the middle of the country, northeast, middle of the country. And we got some unsettled weather here across the southeast. This front's going to come on in, and it's going to stall because of that ridge here across the south for next week. So we're not going to really do a whole lot. We'll get a little rain here across the east coast here. Let me slow this down here a little bit here as we kind of see that weather here across the west. Looking at there going into Friday, even some snows. Yeah, we're going to talk about some snows there across portions of Montana and Wyoming at the higher elevations. Some thunderstorms. That could be a severe weather risk, I think, on Sunday. There might be some thunderstorms there on Sunday there across the north. And you see the front moving off toward the east. There's the front going into the next Tuesday. So here's our front right there. And again, with this high pressure rigid coming in back across the southeast, that's really not going to allow that front to bring any cool air down to the south. So you guys in the south are going to stay on the warm side there. This does push it to the northeast, though. We got a little cool down there across the Great Lakes. I did notice here, looking here on Wednesday, I see the 540 line. So that's some cold air kind of coming in there right there briefly. But again, the middle of the country is still going to look pretty mild, as well as a lot of the west. So not any big changes there. Here's your precipitation, 7-day totals here. Again, with the frontal system, that northern track stays there. We get a little unsettled weather here across the southeast. We get a little moisture coming out the Atlantic here going into Tuesday, Wednesday next week. That active storm track here toward the north stays active. Southwest looks quiet. But again, you notice this down here. And like I said, if that tropical stuff comes in here toward the end of next week, we'll see. We're probably a little over a week away to see if we get in that to kind of work into the southwest or not. All right, let's talk about snow. I love talking about snow. And here we got some of your snowfall here, higher elevations, 8 inches here. We got over 9 inches there. Again, these are up above the higher elevations of Wyoming and Montana. A little bit coming into Colorado and Utah there, and even into California. But again, we're just kind of making that transition now to where we start tracking that winter weather as we head deeper into fall. Now, this story is going to continue to dominate here for the most part. Even with the cool down in the west, we're still looking at above normal temperatures for the most, so either at normal or above normal. That's going to continue to be a problem there, as this is taking us from October 6th through the 10th. So right through the 10th, we're looking very warm here in the east. Again, any brief cool downs, they're very short, but the overall average for that period is above average. So 8 to 14 days, look at the whole country. The whole country is lit up like this. Now, if the European model, which is showing that 15th, showing that big trough in the east, obviously this goes out to the 14th. That was showing the 15th. We'll see this change. But again, what the Climate Prediction Center looks like for these outlooks is they're looking for model consistency. They're looking to see what the progression of the models are doing to show that average. Right now, they're not seeing it. So until we start seeing something that's going to change the overall weather pattern, it's going to stay on the warm side. We do dry out a little bit here across the Pacific Northwest here, going from the 6th to the 10th there. You kind of see the drier weather there, a little wet out here in the west and in the southeast. I'm especially worried about this if that tropical moisture works its way up here toward the end of next week. And then the 8th to the 14th, we dry out here across the east, across the northeast down here to the middle of the country, a little wet out here in the west as we go from again, from the 8th to the 14th. All right, so looks like the first couple of weeks of the month are going to be fairly average, I would say. You know, October gets that transition month there, but I'm going to be watching that jet stream very closely to see how that we make that transition and see if we do turn into an active period. Again, we've got the Gulf of Mexico still fairly warm, high water vapor content there. We didn't get any tropical systems to kind of alleviate that. I'm concerned about the moisture flow as we get more active storm systems going into the fall. We got very warm water out into the northern Pacific, which has me concerned as well. And then, you know, La Nina is in play. So we got there's so many variables here for this winter season. When I see these winter forecasts that are getting posted out there, I'm like, it's a shot in the dark, man. You're just kind of rolling the dice because I just see a fall. Fall looks pretty textbook as far as La Nina is concerned. But if it's forecast to weaken as it's supposed to going into December, then all bets are off for the winter. I think it's going to be ones of extremes, from severe cold, extreme warmth, severe weather. I just think it's going to be all over the map. That's at least there's just so many variables at play. So we'll see how it works out as we get closer. Who's out there for this morning? We got Edith. Good morning, Edith. Good to see you out there. And is that Cheese Grits? Cheese Grits. Good to see you out there this morning. Appreciate you guys checking us out here for today. Hey, we added a few more folks up there. That was nice. I'm always like we add a few more people back to the channel here. So again, I appreciate it. Again, this month I've got to have time to work on the graphics and stuff as we make the transition change from Weather Nerds Unite over to just Majestic Weather. That again kind of be the national brand to my local brand, which is the North Georgia Majestic Weather. Again, we'll kind of make that transition, and we're going to keep the same mantra. We're not changing that. It's going to be, keep you prepared, not scared. Forecast without all the hype. I just think there's too much of that out there in the YouTube universe, and we just don't need that. And hopefully, there's an audience out there that's getting tired of it too, and will find their home here. All right, you guys take it easy. We'll see y'all tomorrow. I got to go pick my dad up here at 8:30. I got to take him to go get his dentures. He's got new teeth finally from the VA. I'm looking forward to getting that taken care of. All right, you guys take it easy. We'll see you tomorrow. You guys have a great day.